We must turn to Venezuela as a first-order condition. You have an encyclopedic knowledge of these international relationships and our international history. The U.S. has projected itself before, many would suggest often with failure. How does America, and with Christopher Friedland here, how does Canada project to assist Venezuela given a checkered history?
It was interesting because with the recent news in Venezuela, their bond markets were rallying, which was not what one would have typically expected. I think the bigger problem in Venezuela, putting aside politics, which is the big elephant in the room, obviously, is that essentially they're a commodity seller, right? And oil prices have been volatile, but they're not exactly heading very high.
Right.
So I think there's 2 points to look at. One is on the very short news of the day in terms of what has happened in the last 24 hours. I think it is really wonderful that Canada is doing what it's doing. But I think the political situation, even if you get into a new leader who's fine, will still not solve problems.
Yeah. And I want to point out that Ms. Beschloss also has a definitive book on natural gas, so she knows of Caracas, to say the least. There's no Washington consensus. It's blown up. There's no post-American world. Good morning, Mr. Zakaria. John Mearsheimer's head is spinning within realist international relations. What's the theme you see out of your Washington that we can project to assist Venezuela, to assist a really interesting and new Brazil as well?
I think very different economies, obviously. When we look at them, they're in two very different places. One is sort of demise of their political leadership. The other one has got new political leadership.
What is the theory of Washington right now? I can't find it.
I don't think there is a clear Washington theory. I think multilateral institutions that work with these countries may have theories. Even they don't have a clear theory on how to deal with the short-term problem in Venezuela. I think Brazil is a very interesting situation right now. Brazil, right now, with its equity markets that did relatively well, surprisingly, in the short run, is going to probably experience a little bit of less exciting equity markets, probably.
Brazil?
Brazil.
Yeah. But so what do investors need from the new Brazilian president? How much time will they give him to fight corruption?
Right now, given what happened in Argentina, just sort of a little bit further, investors don't have a very long leash. Investors are coming into looking at Latin America with the prism of long history, where you have hoped that a country would have a new leader, you would solve the problem over the last 30, 40 years, and you would have a solution. That has not always happened. So I think that the new leader in Brazil will have a very short time to demonstrate that he is going to change things in terms of corruption. Crime is a big problem. I talk to people who invest for us in Brazil, and you hear the gunshot wounds in the best areas in Brazil behind.
What's hot right now in Latin America?
In Latin America, what has been changing a lot is we talk about impact and sustainable investing, and what is really interesting is those are some of the best areas: agriculture, food, clean energy, because, as you know, they have an economy that was very based on for example, hydropower. But they're very seriously looking at the growth, the marginal growth in energy in those countries coming from natural gas and from geothermal, solar, and wind, which is kind of different than what they've been doing in the past. So it provides very interesting potential for international and local investors.
I must look at your resume and move forward to your next job. Dr. Kim stepping aside at the World Bank, and I'm sure you're on any short list of consideration for the World Bank. Have you spoken to Ivanka Trump about a new position at the World Bank? I believe Ms. Trump has been assigned the World Bank mandate.
I have not talked to her, no. I am happy doing what I'm doing.
What kind of leadership does the World Bank need after Dr. Kim's stewardship?
I think really important in the next phase of the World Bank to have somebody who has a really good grasp of financial markets, as well as development, but the new phase of development, which will include a lot of collaboration between the public and the private sectors, because so much of the capital in future will be coming from the private sector in terms of the relative share. And having a leader who can talk on both sides will be very important.
But do a lot of these big organizations really matter? We have leaders across the world that are looking inwards.
Yes.
So actually, what can someone like the World Bank and IMF really do?
Huge role, huge role. So capital will be more and more coming from the private sector moving forward. However, the role of a multilateral institution, including the World Bank, let's just take any of the emerging markets, you know, whether it's Korea at a large scale or Rwanda. What you need is huge capital markets improvements. To trade in these countries is very inefficient. To invest, let's say if you wanted to invest in India today, you would have to create a Mauritius entity. So many inefficiencies that in terms of policy, these institutions could set policy, and policy both at a very practical level and a level of, let's say, pension reform.